long before Israel became a kingdom. Before Jerusalem became a holy city. Before Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. The biblical story begins with a man named Abraham. For billions of people around the world, Abraham is remembered as a father of faith. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all trace important parts of their spiritual heritage back to him. But who was Abraham? Was he a real historical person who walked the ancient roads of the Near East? Or was he a figure preserved through generations of tradition and memory? In this episode, we explore the world of Abraham, the evidence behind the story, and why his legacy became one of the foundations upon which Christianity would eventually emerge. To understand Abraham, we must first travel back nearly 4,000 years. The world of the early 2nd millennium BCE was very different from the world we know today. Great civilizations were rising across the ancient Near East. In Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, cities flourished through trade, agriculture, and organized government. Merchants carried goods across long-distance trade routes. Kings ruled fortified cities. Temples dominated the skylines of ancient settlements. People worshipped many gods associated with nature, fertility, storms, war, and the heavens. This was the world in which the biblical tradition places Abraham. According to the book of Genesis, Abraham was originally known as Abram. He lived in a place called Ur, one of the great cities of ancient Mesopotamia. At some point, God called Abram to leave his homeland and journey toward a distant land that would later become known as Canaan. The command was simple but extraordinary. Leave your country. Leave your people. Leave your father's household. And travel to a land that would be shown to you. According to the biblical account, Abram obeyed. Together with his wife Sarah, his relatives, servants, and livestock, he began a journey that would change religious history forever. The route described in Genesis takes Abram northward through Mesopotamia to a city called Haran. Haran was an important trading center connected to major commercial routes of the ancient Near East. From there, Abram continued south toward Canaan. The land of Canaan was already inhabited by various peoples living in cities, villages, and agricultural settlements. As we explored in earlier episodes, Canaan was a crossroads connecting Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Mediterranean world. According to the biblical narrative, God established a covenant with Abram. A covenant was a sacred agreement. In this covenant, God promised 3 things: a land, a people, and a future. Abram was told that his descendants would become a great nation. This promise became one of the most important themes in biblical history. Eventually, Abram's name was changed to Abraham, often interpreted as meaning father of many nations. His wife Sarai became Sarah. The covenant tradition would shape not only the future story of Israel but also the development of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Yet an important question remains. Can historians verify Abraham's existence? The answer is more complicated than many people expect. Unlike some ancient kings and rulers, there are no inscriptions that mention Abraham directly. No archaeological discovery has yet confirmed his existence. No palace records identify him. No contemporary documents describe his journey. As a result, historians cannot prove that Abraham existed as a historical individual. However, this does not mean the story emerged from nowhere. Many details found in the Abraham traditions reflect the culture and environment of the ancient Near East. Archaeologists and historians have discovered texts from ancient Mesopotamian cities that reveal customs similar to those described in parts of Genesis. Ancient law codes, inheritance practices, family structures, and migration patterns sometimes resemble elements found in the biblical narratives. Some scholars believe these similarities may preserve memories of genuine ancient traditions. Others argue that the stories were written down centuries later and reflect the beliefs and concerns of later generations. The debate continues today. One of the challenges facing historians is that the book of Genesis was compiled long after the period in which Abraham is traditionally placed. The stories were preserved through generations before being written and edited into their present form. This makes it difficult to separate historical memory from theological tradition. Some scholars view Abraham as a historical tribal leader whose story was preserved and expanded over time. Others see him as a symbolic ancestor representing the origins of the Israelite people. Still others suggest that the truth may lie somewhere between these positions. What most historians agree upon is that the Abraham traditions became deeply important to the identity of ancient Israel. Whether historical, symbolic, or a combination of both, Abraham occupied a central place in the biblical understanding of origins. The story of Abraham is not only about migration. It is also about faith. According to the biblical narrative, Abraham repeatedly trusted promises that seemed impossible. He left his homeland without knowing his destination. He believed that descendants would come despite his advanced age. He continued to trust even during times of uncertainty and hardship. For the authors of the Bible, Abraham became an example of faith and obedience. His story was remembered not primarily because of military victories or political power. Instead, it was remembered because of a relationship with God. This made Abraham different from many heroes of the ancient world. Ancient kings often gained fame through conquest. Abraham gained significance through covenant and faith. As centuries passed, Abraham's influence spread far beyond the land of Canaan. In Judaism, Abraham became the founding patriarch of the covenant people. In Islam, Ibrahim became one of the most important prophets and a model of submission to God. In Christianity, Abraham acquired a special place within the New Testament. Early Christians saw Abraham as part of a much larger story that ultimately pointed toward Jesus. The writers of the New Testament frequently referred to Abraham when explaining the meaning of faith. For them, Abraham represented trust in God's promises long before the establishment of the Christian Church. This connection helped Christians link their beliefs to the ancient traditions of Israel. In this way, Abraham became a bridge between the world of Genesis and the emergence of Christianity centuries later. For Christianity, Abraham was more than an ancestor. He represented the beginning of a story that would eventually lead through Israel, the prophets, the Second Temple period, and finally to the life of Jesus. Understanding Abraham helps us understand how Christianity inherited many of its foundational ideas from the earlier traditions of the ancient Israelites. The story of Abraham reminds us that Christianity did not appear suddenly in history. Its roots extend deep into the ancient world. Those roots reach back through centuries of tradition, memory, and faith. And at the beginning of that journey stands Abraham. Whether Abraham was a historical traveler, a remembered tribal ancestor, or a figure shaped through generations of tradition, his influence is undeniable. His story became one of the most powerful narratives in human history. It shaped the identity of peoples, inspired religious movements, and influenced civilizations across continents. Thousands of years after the traditions first emerged, Abraham remains a central figure in the story of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And his journey continues to echo through history. But the story does not end with Abraham. The descendants promised in the covenant would eventually face slavery, struggle, and a dramatic journey that would become one of the most famous stories in the Bible. In our next episode, we explore one of history's greatest mysteries.